Hello, a very good evening. Thanks for joining us. The polls have just closed in Germany in one of the country's most important elections so far this century. At stake, Germany's struggling economy, its relationship with Ukraine and Russia, its attitude to the Trump administration, and what policy will it adopt towards migrants. It's likely that two or more parties will form a coalition. But which parties? The opposition leader, Friedrich Merz, is expected to be the new chancellor, but it's the far-right party, the AfD, which has everyone taking notice. Well, let's bring in our Europe correspondents. Both are in Berlin for us this evening. Siobhan Robbins is with the Christian Democratic Union Party, seen by many as favourite to get most votes, while Adam Parsons is with the AfD party, which appears to have campaigned strongly. And with me in the studio to be the new chancellor, a researcher of European party politics and director of King Centre for German Transnational Relations. So, to Siobhan first, polls suggest the CDU will get the most votes, but that's not the end of the story.
No, that's right. And within seconds of the vote closing, we've already started getting initial exit polls. Now, these are initial results. They're not confirmed yet. They're projections, basically. And what they are saying is what we've really heard for weeks now, that it appears that the Conservative bloc with the Christian Democrats, where I am, and their Bavarian sisters, the CSU, have got the largest share of the vote, predicted at the moment around 29%. Now, controversially, for some in Germany, coming second at the moment is the AfD. They are the far-right party. Exit polls initially showing they've got 19.5%. In third place are the Social Democrats. That's the party of the current Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, on around 16%, and then the Greens. So what happens now? Well, of course, these results will need to be confirmed. But then, basically, in the next hours and days and weeks, we will see a lot of horse trading to try and form a government. So given that the CDU, where I am, and their sisters have the largest share, they're going to be sort of in the pole position to form that government. They do not have, with 29% of the vote, they do not have a majority. So they will need to go into coalition. Now, they could look to the Greens or the SPD to try and do that. But we know there's going to be pushback, because the AfD, in the run-up to this election, has been saying if they come second, which I have to underline is the best result for a far-right party since the Nazi party. If they came second, they were saying that basically it would be undemocratic to keep them out of government. The problem for them is that there's a long-standing agreement here in Germany which says that mainstream parties will not work with the far right, and it's highly unlikely. Friedrich Merz, who we're expecting to become Chancellor, has said he will not work with them. So it's highly unlikely that they would be invited into any coalition. So what's going to happen there? Well, when I spoke to far-right protesters yesterday, they said if this result, which we're expecting, was confirmed, they'd go out into the streets. So we can expect potential protests. We're seeing some more reaction here. What we haven't seen yet is Friedrich Merz. He's expected to come here to give a speech, to start laying the way. But as I say, this is really just the start of quite a long path to power. To give you an impression of how long these things can take, in the last election, it was September when people voted. It was December when we heard who the new Chancellor would be.
And Siobhan, it is going to be many days, potentially longer, as you say, for a new government to form. Just remind us why these elections are happening now, 7 months before they were due.
Yeah, so as you say, we're expecting to have an election in September, but basically there was a former government which was a coalition between three parties. It had a big problem with infighting, so there were the SPDs, the Greens, and the FDP party, and basically they had massive infighting, and the thing that brought them down was a fight about strict debt rolls. One of the parties was sacked, the leader of the party was sacked, and then there was a vote of confidence in Olaf Scholz, the current chancellor. He lost that, which sparked these early elections. But there are big problems coming down the track and also already being experienced by Germany. there's an ailing economy. They're in their second year of recession. They need to build their military, particularly given the wavering that appears to be coming from the US around continuing to protect Europe and to work with Ukraine. There's big question marks around that. Germany is the biggest backer of Ukraine outside America, so we'll be looking at that closely. There are issues around migration. We've seen those issues feed in to the far right and bolster their support. So if Friedrich Merz is the next chancellor, he's going to really need to get on that quickly, and he's already been trying to do that when he's been on that campaign trail. So, for example, his party and him have been putting forward more right-wing solutions to what they see as a migration problem. For example, suggesting that they can put permanent checks on the border. And there are other issues as well to contend migration, namely this rise of the far right. It can't be totally sort of spoken down as just suggesting this is a protest by people in Germany. We've travelled around Germany over the last 3 years, but also in the months running up to this election, and so many people have told us that they are voting for them, not just because they're fed up with mainstream parties, but they really feel that Germany needs to change, that their voices aren't being heard around jobs.
Far right would be kind of like a rhino here at best.
Around migration, around the direction this country's going in. And so really the next government needs to try and fix a broken country.
Okay,
it is broken
for now, thank you very much.
So
the
so many
breaking
illegals
news
in.
then this hour looks likely former Chancellor Angela Merkel's CDU party is likely
and they give them free
to
money.
Power
Let them go around stabbing and killing
Merz.
people.
The exit poll suggests they'll get 29% of the vote. The far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD party, led by Alice Weidel, has surged in popularity. The exit polls predict they'll come second with around 20% of the vote, and Chancellor Olaf Scholz's Social Democratic Party looks to be in third place with 16.5%, and the Greens in fourth with 12%. These are the exit polls. Let's speak to Adam Park.
Yeah, exit polls. Actually, the German party there, FDD, whatever. Anyways, AfD. They're doing actually in actual poll numbers that are being counted. They're doing slightly better, actually. And the party that came in third there, that's their worst showing in 80 years since World War II, and they were part of the whole Nazi control back then. So that's the left-wing party. Actually, they say that all the time. Oh, they call you Nazis, this and that. They're actually the left-wingers.
Parsons, who is with the AfD, and all eyes will be on them this evening, Adam, and whether their often controversial message has landed.
Yeah, it is, and the extent of that controversy is probably represented here.
Reason why that's going off, the Antifa's over there, and they're going to riot and this and that against the FTDP, whatever, DP. So that's going to happen. You're going to see some protests and riots and this and that. That they're losing. They're going all the way from first to third there, you know, and way down actually. They've lost like 30% of their vote that they were going to get, or 28.
So I'm just between where the AfD officials are gathering, down there, the other side of this police line. You can see there's quite significant.
Oh, they're going to blame it on the
officers, police vans going down into the distance, and that cacophony of noise you can hear is coming from over there. This is a protest bus that has been brought here to the edge of Berlin. And as you can see, there's more police officers coming down.
Likely Soros bus.
Move out of the way, so you can just see some of these protesters there have just been pushed to the ground. We had expected some sort of clash here. Effectively, these are the anti-AfD protesters who have been waiting here, and at the stroke of 5 o'clock local time, launched these air raid siren noises, and it looks as if, yeah, I can see right now the police are going into that bus to stop the noise. The air raid siren you can hear has just gone off, and you can hear that chanting against the police. Now that bus has been broadcasting what I have to say is a fairly foul-mouthed tirade against the AfD. There have been allegations from these people calling them neo-Nazis. This is exactly why the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, is such a controversial movement in German politics, because it has synthesized a slice of anger in German society, a sort of
because the media has been putting out this propaganda bullshit for months and months and months, actually for years, actually trying to get rid of a conservative pro-Germany party. That's why it is like that. They call them racist and everything, like what happens here. You know, eventually some point people turn around and say no more, because the ones that are going to be violent are going to be the left. It's going to be the Antifas.
Establishment,
don't blame it on the
voice,
AfD.
Anti-migration, and in some ways completely unapologetic in its messages. Alice Weidel, the Chancellor candidate, has talked of remigration. In other words, she hasn't defined it, but that is an idea of enforced migration of even German citizens with migrant origins who are deemed to not be worthy of their place in German society back to some amorphous country of origin. She is anti-climate change. She is a great mate suddenly of Elon Musk, who rolled in behind her. And these people here, as well as the AfD supporters over there, have been anxiously looking tonight at these results.
Yeah, left wing, real conservative, all this and that. She happens to be gay, by the way. They still hate her, though, if she's going to be pro-Germany. They want one world government.
Results. Now, we're predicting, according to these exit polls, that the AfD will get, what, something just under maybe 20%, around 20%. At the last election, they polled 10%. So, how do you interpret that? Well, on the one hand, the AfD will say they've doubled their vote share. On the other, these people will say they haven't got more. And crucially, when you look at the arithmetic that's already coming out tonight,
they actually had the elections about 9 minutes early because they were worried about AfD taking over first place. And they had to drum up all this hatred toward them and this and that, because they're gaining ground, and they're trying to go around arresting people in Germany for their posts and this and that, and anything that's against the liberal government and all that kind of stuff, against immigration, all that kind of stuff, trying to shut you up and all this and that. And people are still somehow communicating, and it's turning against them, really. That's why they had it sooner. They think the next election that AfD will end up winning it.
It would seem that a coalition will be able to be formed. For instance, off the top of my head, the Social Democrats, the CDU and the Greens potentially could form a governing coalition.
The Conservative Party over there, which would be like our rhinos, let's say if rhinos were in party and you didn't even have any conservatives, that's what would the other party that's in power, going to be in power here, but they're going to have to share it with some other parties, and it's always tough. They got to lean to the left even more because of it, because they won't go with the AfD, which they should, and that would stop the immigration. And that's the biggest thing that Soros wants, is they want more illegals in so they can gain control and make it one world government. That's the whole plan for this.
Without involving the AfD. There was no point when anyone thought the AfD were going to be part of this government. There's a firewall idea in Germany, which is that the main parties refuse to go into government with the AfD. But there's been fears of a breach in that. What these protesters have been trying to pressurize politicians throughout this campaign is to hold firm, to say you don't need to go into government with the AfD. And I suspect that tonight they're feeling good that the AfD doesn't appear to have got more than 20%.
Okay, Adam, stay where you are if you would. We'll come back to you in a moment. But just to remind viewers that it looks likely former Chancellor Angela Merkel's CDU party is likely to win power in Germany under leader Friedrich Merz. The exit poll suggesting this evening they will get 29% of the vote. The far-right alternative.
Actually, later numbers that were coming in, and they're right around that 20% mark. And the top party there is really at about 28.5 that came in. And the STPD one is under 16. If they go under 15, they're in real trouble, I guess, in terms of seats. Now, the way it works there is you don't get a seat unless you get at least 5%. There's about 15% of the vote are going to several of these other tiny parties, so they're not going to get seats. So I don't know how they're going to be proportioned out and how that this is going to work out. That's what's going to be really interesting, because if they get up SPD, or not SPD, AfD gets above that 21-22%, they will have enough to almost block them where they have to deal with them. So
for Germany, or AfD party led by Alice Weidel, has surged in popularity. The exit polls predicting they will come second now with 20% of the vote. And as you can see, Chancellor Olaf Scholz's Social Democratic Party looks to be now in third place with 16.5% of the vote, and the Greens in fourth with 12%. Let's go back to Adam. Adam, you were talking about a potential coalition. The CDU, whatever government it manages to form, if it can't tackle the economy or migration, then the AfD will get further momentum, won't they? They're progressing bit by bit.
Mark, you're right about the Fort Knox thing. That and BlackRock. Oh, they're going to do ads. I'm sorry about that.
Course check is okay.
I'll skip as soon as I can.
We're struggling to hear from Adam. Let's turn to our guest in the studio. Great to have you with us, Dr. Isabel Hertner, researcher of European Party Politics, director of King Center for German Transnational Relations. Great to see you. Fascinating result this evening, isn't it? What do you make of these exit polls?
Sean, I do believe it's a step forward. I mean, they're going from, in the past having single digits and barely having a seat in Parliament up to 20% plus. If they waited a little longer for this election and the media wasn't going around arresting everyone that posted any meme that they didn't like and all this and that, I think it would have been much worse for them. Next election, they do believe they can take over, because a lot of the ones in the top party is supposed to be the conservative ones. They're going to peel a bunch of them off after a while if they partner with the other two real liberal parties to govern. It's going to drive some more people to them, So I think it's a step in the right direction. It's the other thing is the censoring. If they're going to be able to keep censoring and arresting people, that's bad.
So actually, these exit polls don't surprise me, because already for the past months, actually, that has been forecast. So we've already been, in a way, prepared for that kind of result. And it's a very febrile sort of situation in Germany.
We could see that, couldn't we, just from those pictures?
Very polarized, lots of demonstrations over the past few days by people campaigning against the far right. As you've seen there in front of the headquarters of the AfD. So very polarized, emotions running high.
Conservative side?
And the result that shows that the German party system is now very fragmented, that any government formation is going to be difficult. So Friedrich Merz will, he's from what the exit polls told us, he's won 29% of the votes. Okay, it's the highest result, but he's going to need to form a coalition with perhaps two other parties. And
the leader of the AfD and Elon Musk did a live. I'm going to replay that tomorrow probably, or the next day. And it was interesting, actually. She did a live with him, just the two of them. It was actually pretty good and interesting.
That's not going to be easy. And he said he wanted to have a government in place by Easter, so about 2 months to do that. And that's going to be tough negotiations for him.
Yeah, and we know how fragile these coalitions can be. Isabel, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to return, I hope, to our European correspondent, Adam Parsons, who is with those demonstrations and counter-demonstrations outside
I think Merkel
the
took the whole
AfD gathering where
country
they're
down.
watching the results come in. Hopefully, Adam,
illegal
you can hear
immigration
me.
coming in like
I was just
crazy.
making the point that
We had a lot
whatever
of
government
coming in
is
from
formed,
Turkey.
and it may well
It's very
be a
dangerous.
fragile coalition, as you say, with the Greens, with the SPD, the AfD are still going to claim a very victorious night tonight, aren't they? Because they have gained substantially. And not only that, they know that this is the long game. If the new government can't fix immigration, if they can't fix the economy, then they will believe that they're only going to go from strength to strength.
Yeah, the AfD have said that they don't expect to be part of government this time, but they aim to be part of government in 2029. They think that they are on an inexorable ride to success. But really important, in the past few moments, we've had a projection from ARD, the state broadcaster, on the vote share. Now, on their projection, and this I have to say is enormously early, they're saying CDU, CSU Union would have 211 seats. They're predicting the AfD getting 142. And crucially, the SPD, they're saying 116. Why?
Now, remember, they've gone from like 1 or 2 seats to about 140 seats in the last few years. So they've really done well.
Crucially, because on that basis, if you were to put together the CDU and the Social Democrats, you would have marginally more than 50% of the seats in Parliament. And that could be the basis for what is called a grand coalition. The two biggest, most established parties in German politics, there is a long track record of them governing together. And if those projections are right, then instead of German politics looking towards another three-party coalition, which is, of course, what failed last time and led to this election, you could be in a position where you have the two biggest parties, the SPD and the CDU, the most established parties, holding power together. Now, I bring with this all sorts of caveats. These are early projections, and even on these projections,
I think
the
you're going to see a lot of
majority that they would
riots
bring
tonight.
would be slender. They would probably need the
They're going
tacit
to try to
support of
make
other
people
parties,
fear.
but they might get it, because the Greens, who have been in coalition, have good relations with certainly with the Social Democrats through government. The Free Democrats probably have pretty good relations with the CDU, and with that sort of support, they may discover they have a rather stronger coalition than has existed for the past few years. What that would also mean was that the AfD would not have any influence on government. And one of the fears, I think, coming into this election by these people, by the people who so object to the AfD, and, of course, by the great rump of Germans who won't vote for the AfD, won't come out on demonstrations like this, but really object to the AfD, is that if the CDU had to start adapting its policies to make friends with the AfD, then it would drive Germany towards the right. If they're in coalition with the Social Democrats, that creates an entirely different political dynamic. And there's
Now, to me, if they go to the left when people want them to go to the right, that's going to peel people off from that conservative party and get them to the AfD, is my thinking, for the next election, hopefully. And it might even happen sooner if they have a split in their parties.
a primary reminder. Why is this important? Germany is the biggest economy in Europe, the most populous country in Western Europe, and when it comes to Ukraine, just 2 countries away, the biggest supplier of aid behind.
I don't think the people over there are sick of giving money to Ukraine too. So I don't know. I think it's I think they did cheat in this. I don't know if it was enough to make that difference. It's probably 3 or 4%.
United States, it's a G7 nation. This is a consequential election, and right now we have a very, very interesting result.
We really do, Adam. Thank you very much for that. Just a fascinating, Dr. Hertner, isn't it? If that is the case, that the vote share prediction means there could be a grand coalition between the two main parties, one to the centre-left, one to the centre-right, but without the need for any smaller parties. What would that mean for Germany? That's going to be a disappointment, isn't it, for the AfD?
I think the AfD will be disappointed.
I'm willing to bet my own money that if you throw this garbage away off your charts and try my new way of trading, I can turn you.
Anyway, I mean, Friedrich Merz has said that he would keep them out of any coalition. And even though he has pandered to them over the past few weeks.
Well, he's needed their votes, hasn't he? Which was very controversial at one stage.
Absolutely. In a motion he put through the Bundestag, he presented a 5-plan on basically limiting migration, closing off Germany's borders, re-establishing controls and so on. And the AfD voted for him. That was hugely, there was a lot of criticism. It was very controversial in Germany. So he then said, just to make it clear again, they are not joining any coalition with me. Now, if there's a grand coalition, there have been several under Angela Merkel. And I think they worked reasonably well. They are never the desired outcome because most voters prefer a left-wing or a right-wing government, I think. So this is seen as a second best option.
Is there a sense that they would almost be forced to work harder together in order to fight against the sort of the common enemy, if you like?
Yeah, to keep the AfD out, this is necessary. But I think it was slightly easier under Angela Merkel because she was a more centrist, more left-wing politician. So she moved her party a bit more to the center, socially more liberal. Friedrich Merz is more conservative. Economically, but also socially.
And all that
so I think working with him is going to be harder for the Social Democrats. So it's not going to be easy, that coalition. And you might also ask yourself what's in it for the Social Democrats, because they're not going to be, you know, the chancellor is not going to be a Social Democrat. What kind of ministries are they going to get? So they're going to have to negotiate very carefully so that they're in a good place.
A huge amount to play for. Isabel Hertner, thank you very much for the moment. Let's return to Siobhan Robbins, who is in Berlin for us with the CDU, who certainly, according to the exit polls, seem to have garnered the most votes this evening, and now will have to form some sort of coalition. And it seems, Siobhan, doesn't it, that firewall, as it's called, that firewall of parties against the AfD will very much remain intact?
I mean, in the run-up to the selection, Friedrich Merz, who we expect to be the next chancellor, has been under a huge amount of pressure when it comes to the firewall. And that's because in January, there was this vote about immigration. And for the first time since the Second World War, his vote, his draft that he put forward got over the line because of support from the AfD. That alone, it wasn't even a binding motion. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't a government. That alone brought people out onto the streets saying, protect the firewall, while the AfD were absolutely celebrating. And since then, he has been asked at every debate, every public appearance, will you go into coalition with the AfD? And he has said a firm no. Now, of course, he could change his mind. I feel like that's highly unlikely. As we're looking at these predicted polls, predicted seats, it does look at the moment.
Sean, do you want him to go into a coalition with the AfD, or would it be better if they stay out of it?
Like what's emerging is going to be potentially a grand coalition. That's something they have to work out between themselves. That would be the CDU and the SPD, which is the party of the current Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Now, on some things, these two parties do agree. So, for example, what they need to do about the economy, which is ailing, they both agree that needs to be a focus. The war in Ukraine, they both agree with continuing support for Ukraine. But then there are differences on that. Olaf Scholz has been extremely reticent, has said no several times about sending
AfD is the only party against the Ukraine
cruise missiles to Ukraine, whereas Friedrich Merz seems much more open to that. Other things as well, migration. Now, this is the one, as Adam was saying, in the run-up to this election, the CDU and Friedrich Merz in particular saw that there was a gap on the right of politics the AfD has been filling, and in order to hold back some of that support, he pitched ideas around migration in particular that were further right.
In other words, they lied and said, "Oh, we're going to stop the illegal migration." You know what I mean? Right after the election, it'll go right back to where it was. That's what their new voters are.
So putting in permanent controls on the border. Also potentially stopping some asylum seekers from even crossing in and applying for asylum. Now, his opponents, including the SPD, have been saying that
the GMO people there, GNOs, will definitely keep getting them in, I bet.
Legal, and the SPD is much more along the lines of continuing humanitarian support. Also really underlines the need for controlled immigration, because Germany, one of the problems they have is the workforce. So they do need immigrants and skilled migrants. What many people here are concerned about.
Same bullshit they try to fill us up with too. Same thing with the trans issue about the suicide thing. The suicide's actually higher after they go ahead and trans.
Is a huge influx of asylum seekers, which some voters perceive as not giving anything back to society, but potentially taking too much away. So they're going to be issues that they are not on the same page on. The other thing is personality. Friedrich Merz shoots from the hip. He's bold. He doesn't take any prisoners. Olaf Scholz is far more controlled. He's quite slow in making decisions. Many here blame him from the fact that Germany no longer seems to hold a central position in the EU. How will those two get on if they have to go into coalition? That's a really interesting dynamic, and I think people need to be prepared. This isn't going to happen tomorrow. They're not going to come out holding hands, waving and cheering. This often takes weeks and weeks. What I have seen tonight, though, is definitely celebrating. On this big screen behind me, they just beamed in pictures from the AfD HQ. They are absolutely ecstatic. The fact that they have come second, the first far-right party since World War II to come second. They can't believe it. They are celebrating, and they are a force that is going to challenge whoever gets into government in the next 4 years.
Okay, Siobhan, with that update from the German elections in Berlin, thank you for the moment. And of course, we'll keep across the results as they filter in over the next few hours and bring them to you.
Yep.
I believe this is.
Sean, I didn't understand. I guess you were talking about the years then. I thought you were talking about something else. Let me close that one. Let's try. Yeah, we'll go to this one because that guy was on the other one. We'll go here with this one. I have three set up.
Standing by at the CDU headquarters, where I presume the atmosphere is fairly positive. Michaela, how are these exit poll numbers being received there among the Conservatives?
Well, there were instant celebrations, but nobody was ecstatic
Dan,
because currently these first initial exit polls, and it's very early days, are just below that psychologically important threshold of the 30% mark. That's where the Conservative CDU-CSU has been polling in the polls really for months leading up to these elections. And Friedrich Merz did take a risk in Parliament. He did accept votes from the far-right Alternative for Germany, who, as it looks like, have almost potentially doubled their percentage share from just about 10% to just under 20% here. And that is something where he will be seen as responsible. So yes, they know they're in the lead as expected. They know that they're very likely to have Friedrich.
Sean, I've been hearing too that it's really hard to get permits and stuff there in Germany to get any business done or anything, you know, build a house, whatever you need to do. But if you're illegal, you automatically get it. That same type of crap they get.
Merz as the next Chancellor of Germany. That's a huge win, but there's no wow factor as yet. It's not above 30%, and there's a slight sigh of relief that a two-party coalition at these very early hours and minutes seems to be within reach, because that's what nobody here wants, is a complex negotiation that would involve two more partners.
Absolutely. Do you get the impression that the Germans have given Merz a strong mandate? I mean, 29% up almost 5% since the last election, but is he going to go into this in a strong position?
Yes, but there's two factors to this. First of all, the CDU-CSU managed to pick up almost 5 percentage points. That is a big, significant win. But let's just remember that these are snap elections, and they emanate from the spectacular failure of a three-way coalition. So it is the weakness of Olaf Scholz, the current chancellor, and his ability to hold a three-way coalition together. It's also the weakness.
I think it would behoove the United States for them to have a three-way thing, so they'd be constantly fighting and they couldn't join together against the people so much, you know what I'm saying? It would be a lot harder for them.
Of the Social Democrats who have suffered a clear defeat here today.
All right, Michaela Kufner, we're going to have to leave it there at the CDU headquarters. We will be back with you again, no doubt, later on in the evening. Michaela, thank you so much. This is Alice Weidel from the AfD speaking.
It was a fantastic election campaign. We did really well. And as we've seen in the exit polls, what we've seen is that we are the only party who have doubled our position over the last election. Double. They wanted to cut our numbers in half, but the opposite is what has occurred. And one thing is for sure, we will always have an open hand to get involved in a coalition in the German government. The will of Germany is something we will implement. We are always prepared to fulfill the will of the people in a German government. It remains to be seen what will happen in the
other thing, Sean, I'm seeing that she's very willing to work with Trump on getting things done and doing the right thing. You know, stop paying out all this money for the war. Let's end it and find peace there. Then they don't have to worry about paying all that money. It's because they're money laundering. It's being kicked back to them.
The next few weeks. But friends, if what we predicted occurs, that the CDU carries out election fraud on the AfD by copying our program and then entering into a coalition with the left wing, then there'll be new elections faster than you can imagine, and we will overtake the CDU, and that is our aim. Friends, once again, thank you to all of you who are unable to be here this evening, who went out to campaign for us tirelessly, no matter how cold it was, standing on the streets, at the stands, carrying out election campaigning for all of us. Thank you to all of our tireless election campaigners. You were super. You were so strong. It was fantastic.
Ron, is she doing a good job of translating?
And Timo, thank you to you as well for all your support. Fantastic. And I'd now like to give the floor to you. Thank you for your support.
And that was Alice Weidel from the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, speaking about their election results, sounding very upbeat and positive. We're going to get more from our political correspondent who's at the AfD party headquarters, Matthew Moore. Matthew, a strong result for the far right, as expected. So 19.5% is what the exit poll is showing. How are people reacting there?
They're calling that party the far right. Oh my God. That they're left of the rhinos.
I have to say, it's a strange one tonight for the AfD because it's a historic result. They've almost doubled what they got last time, but it was a sense of disappointment as that number was read out in the room. I was here the last time they performed in a national election, and it was much louder. I was expecting scenes of jubilation, of screaming, but there was nothing like that. There was disappointment because they fell under that 20%. They've been polling really solidly on 20%, 21% in some polls, and to come under 20% level is a sense that they were really hoping to be above that. And so, although they're saying that it's a great result and they wanted to half our result, we just heard from Alice Weidel saying that it's a strange atmosphere now because they didn't get above the 20%, and that's in a sense that the air has just kind of left the balloon. It's a strange one, Anya.
Yeah. However, a lot of people did vote for the AfD. So just remind us what's behind this support for the Alternative for Germany.
No, he's saying they're under 20%, but I'm seeing other ones that they're at like 19.9, almost 20 rate where what they're getting is more of the numbers are coming in. I think they're using the exit polls to say 19.5.
Of course, you're right. It's a historic result, and 1 in 5 voters, it looks like, did put their cross next to the AfD. So, of course, they're really delighted. But it's interesting. Just that the initial response was a very muted one. I'll tell you the reasons that many people turned to the AfD is because, as we've heard throughout the night and throughout recent months, there's a sense of real frustration out there among the German public about the economy, about the energy crisis. The bills are going up. People are feeling that pinch in their everyday lives, and the Alternative for Germany is offering solutions to that. Some of them very radical, buying gas from Russia. They're now chanting behind me AfD, and there's a sense that they are confident they're offering something else to the voters. And make no mistake, it is a huge result for them because they're now 1 in 5 voters is voting for them. That means they will have a big voice in the Bundestag. They will probably be the main party of opposition. They are the second biggest force. That means way more exposure. It also means normalization, really important for this party. And the other thing is that it also means a lot of money that they can then pour into marketing and establishing and professionalizing themselves in the next 5 years or 4 years until the next election. And that's what they've got their eye on, is 2029. That's when they hope, as we heard tonight, Alice Weidel said it again, our hand continues to be outstretched. We're willing to take part in government. We're ready. We want to implement the will of the German people. Now, they won't be in the next government, but that's the plan. Their whole aim is to be in the government in 2029, Anya.
So a real sense of momentum there, Matthew. Obviously, I do have to ask, though, I mean, are some people voting for the AfD out of protest because of the issues, because of the rising prices, because their heating bills have gone up? I mean, is this a protest vote to a certain extent?
That's certainly Look, I've been covering this party in recent months. There's been lots of elections last year around Germany, and there were those that felt that they were just fed up with the previous government. It was a 3-party government. It was really kind of marked by infighting over months, if not years. And so people were just fed up with it, and they felt that the only party that really reflected their anger, their frustration, in a meaningful way to them was the Alternative for Germany. And so we did hear in recent weeks and months people saying they're just going to vote for them because they wanted to send a signal. And that is the signal that we have just seen tonight. The second biggest force in the German parliament is a far-right party for the first time since World War II.
I wanted to ask you about Alice Weidel herself, Matthew. We were just seeing footage there of her. She presents herself as more moderate compared to other AfD figures. Do you think that strategy has helped the party attract a broader base?
Absolutely. I think that Alice Weidel is the kind of the professional face of the party. This is a very male-dominated party, a party that has strong links to the far right, a party that is being watched by security services in this country because it's seen as potentially far right, right-wing extremists. Some of its members are labelled as right-wing extremists. And then you have Alice Weidel come along, a lesbian who is married to a Sri Lankan born woman of colour. They have 2 sons. She lives in Switzerland. Alice Weidel lives in Switzerland. She's an economist. She speaks Mandarin. She describes herself as a libertarian conservative. And so she has been able to kind of bring across a more presentable, a more appealing face than the party has had in the previous years. Having said that, Alice Weidel has also had to move further to the right in order to kind of to keep the right wing of the party, which is the dominant, the really extreme right wing of the party is the dominant wing of the party, and she's had to move to the right, and that involved.
Sean, will Germany be better off with the way where they are now, or whether they're going right now with the elections here, than where they were, or is this not an improvement? I know AfD did not get in, but will this change it enough that it'll move stuff in the correct direction, anyways, at least, and they'll be able to deal? Trump will be easier to deal with them.
Using terms and words that are considered to be very popular in right-wing extremist circles, the use of the word remigration, which in extreme circles means repatriating or sending or deporting people, even with German citizenship of a migration background, back to their country of origin, if you like. And that is a really controversial word to use, and that's in the party programme, and Alice Weidel says, I don't mind using it. They also, it must be said, they claim that it just means deporting people who have no right to be in Germany on a big scale. So, but that's just about the normalisation of the party and basically trying to broaden the parameters of what can be said, and essentially Alice Weidel has been able to kind of present herself in the mainstream as a more moderate figure, but at the same time has been able to curry favour with the extreme faction in her party.
I turned off the scrolling for a minute.
Know that she is the best.
A lot of these numbers scrolling across the bottom where they got less than 5%. Now all those people cannot get seats, so they'll end up being proportioned. So I'm wondering how that works out in terms of a coalition government. There's about 15% that are from all these other small, tiny parties, which AfD used to be. So I'm wondering, maybe Sean will know the answer to that. So let me put it back on.
Chance they've got of being a broad appeal, of appealing broadly to the German public. And she said tonight, believe it or not, she said tonight, we are now a Volkspartei, a people's party. And until now, that's really only been the Social Democrats and the Christian Democrats who could really lay claim to calling themselves a Volkspartei. But that's what the AfD is calling themselves tonight.
Matthew Moore at the AfD party headquarters. Matthew, thanks so much. We'll come back to you later. And we're still joined by DW's chief international editor, Richard Walker, and Markus Ziener from the German Marshall Fund think tank.
And we're getting lots and lots of questions about the alternative for Germany and what their results, 19.5% today, according to the exit polls, what that means going forward. And Markus, I would like to ask you, because we just heard from Alice Weidel, she said something to the effect of, we will always have an open hand to coalition building. And Matthew Moore also talked about how the AfD has its eyes really on 2029 as its really, really big election. And of course, I guess the money and all of the things that can change over the next couple of years to 2029. And we've had a question from our YouTube chat here. Is the AfD likely to soften its stances on non-migration issues to appeal to an even wider voter base going forward in the years to 2029?
That's an excellent question, because the AfD is considered to be one of the more right-wing parties in Europe. If you compare them even to the Rassemblement National in France. I mean, this was a clear offer from Alice Weidel to say, well, we are ready to...
Sean, I was saying, is this this other party taking over, even though AfD didn't get second and get in power, so to speak? Will this make a big difference there? Will it help them much? That's what my question was.
Build a coalition with the CDU. However, she knows that this is not going to happen. And if we look at the numbers right now, I think you always have to see the results against the expectations. So the expectation was, as the correspondent pointed out, that it's going to be over 20%. Now it's below 20%. So this is a little bit of a damper for the AfD. And if the results stay the way they do, it would make things much easier for Friedrich Merz to form a coalition with the Social Democrats. So for the AfD, it's a blessing in disguise, to be honest. I mean, they doubled their numbers. They had 10% 3 years ago, and now they have almost 20. But still, it's not enough for them to be part of a government. You're correct. In 2029, I think this is crunch time. In 4 years, if things are not sorted out, if the problems stay the way they do right now, I think the AfD will get even more votes.
If I could ask one more question, we've got another question in the YouTube chat. Someone is asking, I guess that they want a bit of a reminder of what the AfD is and its positions. It's saying, what is far right about the AfD?
Well, it's a racist party, at least in parts. And you know that the intelligence services are observing the party, in particular in Thuringia and other places. They have made a number of allusions to Nazi Germany and saying, well, we should not actually dwell too much on what happened during Nazi time. Alice Weidel herself, she said all the memorials, she dismissed them and said we should not look into the past all the time. And by the way, she was supported by Elon Musk, who in that infamous kind of talk they had, Alice Weidel with Elon Musk, he also said, well, Germany shouldn't look back all the time. So in a sense, this is crucial for Germany to have this, to remember the past and to draw lessons from the past. To dismiss that is something that puts the party to the far right and into an extremist position. There are many more quotes and statements by party leaders who support that.
Richard, can I just ask you, I mean, obviously, so it's not going to be in the government, in the next government, but what role will it take on in the coming years? What is its role going to be?
Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, they're going to be the largest opposition party. And I've just been looking at, we went through, the distribution of seats, and it's early days because these numbers can change and the number of actual seats that the various parties will end up with will change. But just looking at one set of numbers that we had here, the AfD projected to end up with 142 seats in the parliament. The Social Democrats, which have had this, as we were hearing from Nina earlier, 100+ year history, been in government several times, referred to as a Volkspartei, the People's Party that we just heard from Matt there, 116 seats, 142 to 116. So I think that can really have an impact on the we're talking about inside the parliament here, but just the feeling, the dynamics of the parliament, just having a larger number of members of that party compared to the Social Democrats. Being the leading opposition party also, gives them opportunities to set the agenda in parliament to a greater extent than they would otherwise have had. So it does put them in a strong position. And I think, and depending on what kind of a constellation ends up forming a government here, if you do end up with a say a three-way coalition once again, say with the Conservatives, and then with two progressive parties, so you've got a kind of a conservative progressive coalition with three parties in it, there's a very good chance that they're going to have a tough time. They're having to cooperate over an ideology.
Sean, the extremist agenda might cause other ones to join the AfD, is what I'm hoping. I might drive some more out of the conservative party over to them. The problem is the censoring over there. You can get arrested if you post stuff against the government there, and fined and all that kind of crap. So we've got to carry their water and post stuff so that they can see it, but not be on their pages, so to speak. Basically, is what's got to happen. I think. I'm hoping it's a step in the right direction. I don't know that. I think the media wants it to be a coalition with the far left because they don't want the moderates, the ones that are supposed to be moderates, which are left wing, being in power. They don't want someone to really shut down the borders. They want this to happen. They want to ruin. They hate Christianity.
Logical divide. You have three parties. there's a very high chance of kind of that descending into bickering. And then,
as we saw in the last government. But then you'll have the AfD in Parliament, and perhaps with one or two other smaller parties, and they'll be saying, well, you know, if the Conservatives would just form a coalition with us, we wouldn't have all of this bickering. And there, of course, we come to what Marcus was just talking about, all of the reasons why the other political parties say, well, we just can't touch you, you know, until you start. But then it may become a bit of a debate of like, for the AfD, well, do they then try to moderate themselves so that they're in a position by the year 2029 to be seen as more palatable to other parties? Of course, this is election. We're talking about a 4-year process now, so we should probably get ahead
of borders, and they want to moderate that. That's the biggest deal for them, because they want to tear down Germany. They want one world government
of ourselves. But it's going to be a very, very interesting dynamic, and one that brings a lot of opportunities for the AfD.
Absolutely, because there are elements of the AfD which are very extreme, aren't there? But as you say, Richard, we don't want to go too far into the future. We want to stay talking about this evening. We are going to speak now to our correspondent at the SPD party headquarters. That's DW's chief political correspondent, Nina Hase, who joins us now from the SPD headquarters. I think we're just trying to bring her in. There she is. Nina, this is not a great result for the Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, obviously. What are people saying there at the SPD headquarters?
That this has to have consequences in terms of who takes the responsibility, who is to blame for this historic poor result. That is the worst result the SPD, Germany's oldest party, has had in modern history. So since the end of World War II. And
yeah, about 80 years.
Of course, people are now asking themselves, what was it the wrong decision to go into this election campaign with the current German Chancellor Olaf Scholz? Should we have gone for Germany's defense minister instead? If we all go back a couple of weeks, the SPD looked as though they were going to replace Olaf Scholz with Boris Pistorius, the very, very popular German defense minister. Boris Pistorius then felt forced to say, I never wanted to run anyway. He didn't want to challenge the German chancellor because that would have looked like a coup here. But of course, all these kind of questions are being asked now. What is also clear, Olaf Scholz is not seen as having to take all the blame for this poor result here. The party leadership is also very much in focus by the voter base. They're saying the way that we allowed for this bickering, all this infighting that reached the public, that has to have consequences also for the current duo that's leading the party. So Lars Klingbeil and Saskia Esken, if they don't step down tomorrow, then that is going to cause some serious problems. Whatever is going to happen, a tragic day for Germany's oldest party. Definitely a lot of soul searching will have to be done, and it's not clear who the next generation is going to be that's going to take the Social Democrats back into a position of confidence.
That's right. I mean, Scholz came in to his role as Chancellor by promising stability, didn't he? He followed Angela Merkel and said, you can trust me, I'm not going to shake things up too much. So when you say these results have to have consequences, does Scholz have a political future?
More boxes, more options. Grainger has over 1,700 box types in stock and ready to help you.
What we're hearing here from people is that it's partly his responsibility, definitely, that this chance of leading the country through this very, very difficult period was not done in a successful way, that they're now having to hand back the chancellery again to Friedrich Merz from the Conservatives. That's very, very, very likely at this point in time, that Olaf Scholz is going to have to move out. Now, he is an extremely experienced politician, Olaf Scholz. He has been he was Angela Merkel's finance minister, you said it, but he was also the mayor of Hamburg, and he's very, very sure of himself. So I do think that he's got a couple of supporters who still want to benefit from his experience behind the ranks here, but definitely not in the limelight once the new government takes over. Having said all that, of course, he's going to stay in power until that new government is being formed. We're hearing that that might take till Easter. They're all saying that they will be as quick as they possibly can, because they are aware that lots of those foreign policy challenges are very, very difficult, and they need a German response, and Germany has done a lot of navel gazing. And
actually, I think that'll help Trump. He can get a lot done before they get into power and end up standing against them.
Recent weeks, Berlin has been silent essentially on the international stage. The Europeans are waiting for a German positioning on all of that. So Olaf Scholz will certainly play a role in the next weeks to come. And then if the pressure from both the US and Russia continues, then we might see ourselves in a different geopolitical scenario in a couple of weeks' time. Who knows? But as of now, as of tonight, Olaf Scholz will go down in history as the least popular and the least successful German chancellor in post-war German history.
Nina Hase at the SPD headquarters. Nina, thanks so much for that analysis. We'll come back to you for more in a little while. All right, we're going to get you up to date on what is happening. The first projected results have now been published, so let me tell you about them. They indicate that the conservative CDU-CSU bloc is on course, as we're expecting, to win the election and emerge as the biggest party in the Bundestag, the German parliament. The Alternative for Germany could see a big rise in its share of the vote and come second, but the Social Democrats of Chancellor Olaf Scholz, as we've just been hearing, look set to take a big hit and come third. So let's take a look at those projected results in more details, Jared.
That's right. I can read those out to you. According to the latest projected results, the CDU-CSU Conservative bloc on 29%, up 4.9% from the last election, followed by the Alternative for Germany on 19.6%. That is up 9.2%. The Social Democrats of the incumbent Chancellor, 16%, down 9.7%. Then we have the Greens, 13.3%, minus 1.4% from the 2021 election. After that, we have the Left on 8.6%, up 3.7% from the last election. The Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, a new party that's a year old, 4.7%. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the Free Democrats too, the pro-business Free Democrats. They are on 4.9%, a big drop from them. For them, down 6.5%, and other parties 3.9%. Anya.
Yep, and voter turnout in these elections was 84%, according to the exit polls. Now, this is higher than voter turnout
Democrats
in the last elections. So what we're seeing is quite a big turnout here, higher than the elections in 2021. That was 76.
What does everyone think about that kind of turnout? We never get that here, other than mail-in ballots, if they count those. Some places have over 100% turnout, more votes than there's people, but in real person turnout, that's pretty high. You know, I'd like to see it here. Definitely, the Democrats would have trouble if it really turned out that much.
0.4%. All right, let's cross over now. We're going to go back to the Green Party's headquarters. Our correspondent there, Julia Saudelli, is standing by. Obviously, a less successful result for the Green Party. Julia, how are people reacting there, and what are they kind of assuming or hoping for? I mean, do they think that the Greens could still be part of the next government?
Well, we heard cheering when the result was read out here. It wasn't crazy, very loud cheering, but regardless, there was some.
You put all those nutcake Green Party in the basket, all the environmentalist nutcakes, as far as I'm concerned.
Celebration because the result isn't that bad if we consider how much the Greens have been a part of this last three-way coalition that has been deemed quite unpopular, if we consider that some of its ministers and some of the measures that were sort of promoted more by the Green Party were strongly criticized in the media, in the political debate, but also among voters. They are the one of the three parties of the coalition that have lost the least amount of votes if these first projections hold around 1%. So it's not a terrible result for the Greens, and it seems to be a result around 13-14% that leads back to basically the Greens voter base, the voters who will vote for the Greens regardless. And this is a result that isn't their best possible outcome that they had hoped for, but it is still okay. Now, whether this leads to any participation in government is still a big open question. We've heard from the leadership of the Green Party, but also from their chancellor candidate, Robert Habeck, that he was very much willing, and he still is very much willing to enter a government. He wants to take on responsibility. He wants to continue shaping Germany's politics, especially in such difficult times internationally, geopolitically, and challenging times for Germany too. The question is whether this will be possible. As the numbers stand now, a coalition with the Greens and the Conservatives looks unlikely. Looking at the numbers, they could possibly enter government in a three-way coalition with the Social Democrats and the Conservatives. But given the not so great experience that the parties have had in the recent three-way coalition in this latest government, I think many are wary now of actually going into a coalition with so many different parties, with so many different positions, knowing that it could lead to very difficult interactions and making it harder to find compromise.
Julia, in the this whole election campaign, climate change was hardly ever mentioned, was it? So, you know, do you think that as the core issue of the Green Party, do you think that the Greens are essentially now sort of looking for a new meaning? I mean, how do they offer themselves to people? What's their sort of their selling point?
Yeah, this has been a move that we've already seen starting in the last election, where the Green Party is trying to position itself as a party for the middle of society, a party that can reach out to different parts of society. And
Julia, I'm just going to interrupt you. I'm sorry, because I can see behind you that Robert Habeck is about to start speaking, and we're just going to listen in.
Erlaubt mir und uns ein paar einordnende.
Me to just give you a couple of words about the projected results that we've got on an evening that we know is going to be quite a long one before we really know what the results are. Let me begin with what we said before 6 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you for the election campaign. Thank you for joining ranks. Thank you for supporting one another. Thank you for the power that you put into our campaign. This is not something you can take for granted. I have to say it was exactly the election that I dreamed of, the exact election campaign we wanted to wage, and I'm grateful of what we've managed to do. We got ourselves out of the poll dip of 10% when the previous coalition broke apart, and we pulled our election result up closer to what we had, 21. None of this is anything we can take for granted. Thank you to all of our election campaigners. Thank you to the parties, the headquarters, and for the grassroots joining forces. And thank you to Annalena as well. Another thing we have to say, though, is that I wanted more. I think all of us dreamed of a better result. We were hoping to get higher results, and we were there. You know, we were up to 14% just a couple of weeks back, and then something happened that at least changed our election campaign, and that was Friedrich Merz voting in a motion with the AfD, and then many people voted against Merz, and they said we don't want to be.
A lot of these Green Party ones, the ones that block the road, put paint all over pictures, and chain themselves to different things all over the environment, crap, you know. So I was hoping for them to even go lower. AfD, for those who just came in, AfD went way up, over 10%. They are in second place, but the way they do coalition parties and stuff like that, it probably will be out of power, but they do have some leverage, and they're moving in the right direction. You know, I think Trump is having an effect over there. Everything's moving toward the right. They got the real leftists out of power, but the ones that came in are basically rhinos. It would be better if the AfD were the ones that were in the number one party. We'll see how it goes.
In a coalition with the Union bloc. And I understand that, but it did make it harder for us.
And we're going to interrupt Robert Habeck because now we're going to listen to Friedrich Merz from the CDU.
Konrad-Adenauer-Haus an diesem historischen Wahlabend, dem 23. Februar 2025.
So here we are, February 23rd, 2025. The Union bloc won this election.
To Friedrich Merz from the CDU.
Wir haben sie gewonnen.
We won the elections. We won them because the Union bloc worked together well, and we prepared very, very well for these elections and for taking on government responsibility. I want to say thank you to Markus Söder, the leader of the Christian Social Union Party. I want to thank the Executive Committee as well, and representing the many thousands of party members who gave their all to wage a fantastic election campaign, particularly to the young Union bloc members. You waged a wonderful election campaign. And I want to say to our voters, thank you for the trust that you have placed in me personally and in all of us in the party. I know how important the responsibility is. I understand the dimension of the task ahead, and I will be taking it on with great respect. And I know it's not going to be easy. And in this context, I want to express my respect for our political competitors as well. We waged a tough election campaign, but it was important to be as tough as we were. We had to engage with economic policy, migration, foreign policy, domestic security. But now we're going to put that aside and talk with one another. And we want to get a government capable of acting as quickly as possible with a sound parliamentary majority, because, friends, the world will not wait for us to do that. It's not going to wait for long coalition talks. We have to become capable of acting quickly so that we can do the right thing.
Yeah, Sean, the EU, when they did that, Brexit, and well, Brexit tried to get them out of it. When they did that, what they were doing is they installed real left-wing people that was a panel that would rule over all the European countries. Because they couldn't get far enough elected, they were able to appoint them onto that whole European panel that was causing all this stuff, especially on the environment stuff. It's really ridiculous. It was basically, we want to take all your money, you'll own nothing, and the ones in power will be happy, basically.
Thing at home, so that we are strong and present in Europe, and so that the world sees that Germany has a reliable government in place. And the Christian Democrats and the Christian Social Union and I personally stand exactly for this approach. So on this note, let me express my gratitude once again. Thank you for all of you who came out here this evening. I've never seen so many people coming out to celebrate here. in the party headquarters. We've never had so many representatives of the press here. We've never had so many visitors here in the party headquarters.
For those that came late, the party that was in power just got less votes or a lower percentage of the vote than they've had since World War II in 80 years. That's how much of a change it's going to be.
So now we're going to wait for the final election results. But one thing is for sure, as we've said in the run-up to these elections, now we're going to really get things going. The party has started. We're going to be celebrating together this evening, and from tomorrow morning, we'll get down to work again. Friends, thank you, and welcome to the party headquarters. Welcome to where the Union Bloc Party is going to celebrate our victory. Thank you very much for coming out this evening. Thank you for your support, and thank you for giving us a mandate to form a government. Thank you.
Taxes was paying the price.
Deep in the oldest part of Cairo, there's a mysterious salon known as the Crown Temple.
Hello, a very good evening. Thanks for joining us. The polls have just closed in Germany in one of the country's most important elections so far this century. At stake, Germany's struggling economy, its relationship with Ukraine and Russia, its attitude to the Trump administration, and what policy will it adopt towards migrants. It's likely that two or more parties will form a coalition. But which parties? The opposition leader, Friedrich Merz, is expected to be the new chancellor, but it's the far-right party, the AfD, which has everyone taking notice. Well, let's bring in our Europe correspondents. Both are in Berlin for us this evening. Siobhan Robbins is with the Christian Democratic Union Party, seen by many as favourite to get most votes, while Adam Parsons is with the AfD party, which appears to have campaigned strongly. And with me in the studio, Dr. Isabel Hertner, researcher of European party politics and director
remember,
of the
AfD
for German
is doing the best they've
relations.
ever done.
So, to Siobhan first, polls suggest the CDU will get the most votes, but that's not the end of the story.
No, that's right. And within seconds of the vote closing, we've already started getting initial exit polls. Now, these are initial results. They're not confirmed yet. They're projections, basically. And what they are saying is what we've really heard for weeks now, that it appears that the Conservative bloc with the Christian Democrats, where I am, and the Bavarian sisters, the CSU, have got the largest share of the vote, predicted at the moment around 29%. Now, controversially, for some in Germany, coming second at the moment is the AfD. They are the far-right party. Exit polls initially showing they've got 19.5%. In third place are the Social Democrats. That's the party of the current Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, on around 16%, and then the Greens. So what happens now? Well, of course, these results will need to be confirmed. But then, basically, in the next hours and days and weeks, we will see a lot of horse trading to try and form a government. So given that the CDU, where I am, and their sisters have the largest share, they're going to be sort of in the pole position to form that government. They do not have, with 29% of the vote, they do not have a majority. So they will need to go into coalition. Now, they could look to the Greens or the SPD to try and do that. But we know there's going to be pushback because the AfD in the run-up to this election has been saying if they come second, which I have to underline is the best result for a far-right party since the Nazi party. If they came second, they were saying
and far-right bullshit.
Basically,
the media always
it would
labels
be undemocratic to keep them out of government. The problem for them is that there's a long-standing agreement here in Germany which says that parties, mainstream parties, will not work with the far right, and it's highly unlikely. Friedrich Merz, who we're expecting to become Chancellor, has said he will not work with them. So it's highly unlikely that they would be invited into any coalition. So what's going to happen there? Well, when I spoke to far-right protesters yesterday, they said if this result, which we're expecting, was confirmed, they'd go out into the streets. So we can expect potential protests. Just seeing some more reaction here. What we haven't seen yet is Friedrich Merz. He's expected to come here to give a speech, to start laying the way. But as I say, this is really just the start of quite a long path to power. To give you an impression of how long these things can take, in the last election, it was September when people voted. It was December when we heard who the new chancellor would be.
And Siobhan, it is going to be many days, potentially longer, as you say, for a new government to form. Just remind us why these elections are happening now, 7 months before they were due.
Yeah, so as you say, we're expecting to have an election in September, but basically there was a former government which was a coalition between three parties. It had a big problem with infighting, so there were the SPDs, the Greens, and the FDP party, and basically they had massive infighting, and the thing that brought them down was a fight about strict debt rolls. One of the parties was sacked, the leader of the party was sacked, and then there was a vote of confidence in Olaf Scholz, the current chancellor. He lost that, which sparked these early elections. But there are big problems coming down the track and also already being experienced by Germany. There's an ailing economy. They're in their second year of recession. They need to build their military, particularly given the wavering that appears to be coming from the US around continuing to protect Europe and to work with Ukraine. There's big question marks around that. Germany is the biggest backer of Ukraine outside America, so we'll be looking at that closely. There are issues around migration. We've seen those issues feed in to the far right and bolster their support. So if Friedrich Merz is the next chancellor, he's going to really need to get on that quickly, and he's already been trying to do that when he's been on that campaign trail. So, for example, his party and him have been putting forward more right-wing solutions to what they see as a migration problem. For example, suggesting
they never fail to call them right wing all the time.
And there are other issues as well to contend with, namely this rise of the far right. It can't be totally sort of spoken down as just suggesting this is a protest by people in Germany. We've travelled around Germany over the last 3 years, but also in the months running up to this election, and so many people have told us that they are voting for them, not just because they're fed up with mainstream parties, but they really feel that Germany needs to change, that their voices aren't being heard around jobs, around migration, around the direction this country's going in. And so really the next government needs to try and fix a broken country.
Long ago, receding glaciers helped to carve Seneca Lake.
Okay, Siobhan, for now, thank you very much. So the breaking news then this hour looks likely former Chancellor Angela Merkel's CDU party is likely to win power under leader Friedrich Merz. The exit poll suggests they'll get 29% of the vote. The far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD party, led by Alice Weidel, has surged in popularity. The exit polls predict they'll come second with around 20% of the vote, and Chancellor Olaf Scholz.
So if you add the rhinos and the real conservatives there together, they do have more than 50%, but there's such a political media thing that you can't go with the AfD, that they'll combine with some real liberal parties and still allow all the illegals to come into their country. That's what's going to happen. But hopefully they'll get some sway by having such a high percentage of the vote and so many seats.
Social Democratic Party looks to be in third place with 16.5%, and the Greens in
finishing
with 12%.
in 80 years.
Exit polls. Let's speak to Adam Parsons, who is with the AfD, and all eyes will be on them this evening, Adam, and whether their often controversial message has landed.
Yeah, it is, and the extent of that controversy is probably represented here. So I'm just between where the AfD officials are gathering, down there, the other side of this police line. You can see this quite significant line of police officers.
Or this video played on the other video I
going
played.
down into the distance.
It's a little bit
and that
different.
cacophony of noise you can hear is coming from over there. This is a protest bus.
Which is Soros, Antifa. That's the word I was looking for. That are there. I wonder where they get all the money for the bus and all that equipment. They're going to try to protest. They're going to try to riot, try to scare people. That's what their job is.
Been brought here to the edge of Berlin. And as you can see, there's more police officers coming down now.
First, you got a lot of trans people there.
So
all
you
the
could just
trans.
see some of these protesters there have just been pushed to the ground. We had expected some sort of clash here. Effectively, these are the anti-AfD protesters who have been waiting here, and at the stroke of 5 o'clock local time, launched these air raid siren noises, and it looks as if, I can see right now the police are going into that bus.
Yeah, one guy's wearing an F Trump
stop the noise
thing there.
The air raid siren you can hear is just gone
Oh no,
off,
it's his AfD.
and you can hear that chanting.
Funny that they're using
the police.
English
now
words
that bus
on
has
their
been broadcasting what I have to say is a fairly foul-mouthed tirade against the AfD. There have been allegations from these people, calling them neo-Nazis. These
There
is
goes the Nazi words
exactly
again.
why the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, is such a controversial movement in German politics, because it has synthesized a slice of anger in German society, a sort of anti-establishment voice, anti-migration, and in some ways completely unapologetic in its messages. Alice Weidel, the Chancellor candidate,
to keep your
has talked of remigration. In other words, she hasn't defined it, but that is an idea of enforced migration of even German citizens with migrant origins who are deemed to not be worthy of their place in German society back to some amorphous country of origin. She is anti-climate change. She is a great mate, suddenly, of Elon Musk, who rolled in behind her. And these people here, as well as the AfD supporters over there, have been anxiously looking tonight at these results. Now, we're predicting, according to these exit polls, that the AfD will get, something just under maybe 20%, around 20%. At the last election, they polled 10%. So, how do you interpret that? Well, on the one hand, the AfD will say they've doubled their vote share. On the other, these people will say they haven't got more. And crucially, when you look at the arithmetic that's already coming out tonight, it would seem that a coalition will be able to be formed. For instance, off the top of my head, the Social Democrats, the CDU and the Greens potentially could form a governing coalition without involving the AfD.
Yep, I'm going to leave it there.
Imagine making four.
Oh, boy, these ads, I tell you. I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully everyone got a little something out of that. I got to get back to the right screen so I can see myself. Yeah, I'm on it. I thought I'd bring as much as I could. It was hard to find a lot of this in English. I tell you. Let me remove that so I'm on here. So I think it's heading in the right direction. They didn't win, which was going to be really hard to go from like 5% or 10% way up to the top, especially with the media, all of Germany, all the left wings of all of Europe came there and tried to get out the vote against them, all that kind of stuff. People were getting arrested for their posts. If it's pro-AfD and they call it racist and all that, and they're getting arrested and fined. So that's hard for information to get out, So, all right, take care. God bless you. I do plan on playing the Elon Musk interview with that Alice from Germany leader there, the AfD leader. They both had a thing there, a real long one, actually. All right, take care. God bless. I'll probably do it tomorrow. I'm not positive. Tomorrow, 5-ish or something. Take care. God bless. 5 p.m. Eastern. Bye-bye.